Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, welcome to the Mahatma Gandhi Conference Center in Niamey. I am Hanan Ferrojani. I'm a journalist and I am a media specialist. I am happy to be here today to moderate this event with you, this very high-level event here in Niger. Thank you for your presence here today. Excellencies, members of the government, members of parliament, members of the delegation of the World Bank and partners, members of the diplomatic corps and students, welcome. Thank you also to the University of Niamey that is hosting this event here in the Mahatma Gandhi Center. Welcome also to all of those following us through the World Bank Live, the live webcast of this event around the world. It is available in French, English, Spanish, and Arabic. I invite you, ladies and gentlemen, to now follow the live tweet of the World Bank throughout our day with the hashtag Reshaping Development. We are gathered here today to hear the positioning speech in advance of the spring meetings of the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. This is the first time that this major event is taking place in Niger, in the heart of the Sahel, and the presence here of the president of the World Group Bank and his delegation is a very strong sign of the support that all of the partners wanted to give to this region, which is faced with many challenges, as we know, but which is also a land of opportunity and future. As I said a few minutes ago, we are here in the Mahatma Gandhi Conference Center, but it's the University of Niamey that is hosting this event. And this is why I would like now to welcome the Dean of the University of Niamey, and he will speak with a few welcoming remarks. Thank you. Mr. Dean, the Dean will be with us in a few minutes. Thank you.
Merci d'applaudir. Merci beaucoup. On va lui donner quelques
you can wish him a warm welcome. You can applaud if you would like to. If he hears me, I ask him to kindly please come down to the stage. Thank you.
Attention. Excellence, Monsieur le Président de la République, chef de l'État.
Excellency, Mr. President of the Republic, Mr. Prime Minister, head of the government, so the President of the World Bank Group, Vice President of the World Bank Group and the IFC, ladies and gentlemen, members of the government, dear guests, dear members of the diplomatic corps, Mr. the Governor of the region of Niamey, Mr. the President of the City Council of Niamey, dear representatives of the University of Niamey, dear professors and researchers and students, also dear members of the administration of the university, dear students and guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to welcome you here in Niamey, and I would like to thank the president of the World Group Bank, Mr. David Malpass. Thank you so much for choosing Niger and the Niamey University for holding this positioning speech. This speech, this event rather, has two specificities. First of all, the presence of Mr. Bazoum, the President of the Republic and the Head of State. Thank you. We decided to have this in the Mahatma Gandhi Center in this beautiful space that is our amphitheater today. Welcome also to the representatives of the university here today. And choosing this university was not random. As we all know, there has been funds for African Excellence Centers, and the World Bank is financing 2 projects in higher education and research. They are being carried out. The first center is the Regional Excellence Center that is at the Agriculture University. And the second center is the Innovation Emergent African Center in the teaching of math and science in sub-Saharan Africa, which is located at the Teachers University. We also have several activities implemented within the project LIRE, with the training of teachers, and this ranges from preschool to high school. I would also like to stress that the teams working on these 3 projects have been also working with synergies with all of the different activities and actors. And I would like to say that we will support the activities from our excellence centers in different fields, depending on the new financing that may come. We also would like to thank the World Bank for financing our educational sector in general, and particularly higher education. Education plays a key role for the development of our country, and it is a priority in our view, and also for the highest authorities of Niger. We have a new program that the president set up, and education is a top priority. I only have a few minutes, so let me wrap up by wishing you an excellent stay here in Niger, Mr. the President of the World Bank Group. Long live the World Bank, long live Niger, and thank you so much for your attention.
Merci, on l'applaudit également. Je vous remercie.
Thank you so much. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, Mr. the Dean, for these words. And if you allow me, I would like now to give the floor to Mr. Bazoum for his remarks.
Monsieur le Premier ministre, chef du gouvernement,
Mr. Prime Minister, head of government, Mr. Malpass, President of the World Group Bank, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the authorities of Niger, Vice President of the IFC, Mr. Ousmane Diagana, Vice President of the West Africa and Central Africa region of the World Bank, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to wish a warm welcome to Mr. David Malpass, President of the World Group Bank, and his delegation. Mr. President, your visit here shows the quality of the relationship between the World Bank and Niger, and it also shows the high consideration and regard that you have towards our country. So we are deeply honored by your presence here today. Our collaboration with the World Bank Group since the beginning, but particularly in the last few years, as far as I can tell, from 2021, since I started in my mandate, it is a very satisfying relationship, I have to say, and I am looking forward, Mr. President, to see the alignment of our cooperation on the priorities that we have defined. And I would like to seize the opportunity to pay tribute to the work that has been done by the World Bank in Niger and in all of the Sahel countries, more generally speaking. You have given a very special attention to the countries of Sahel, and I think this is very evident. Since you have started at the head of this institution, I can see that this interest translated into a portfolio that gained in substance, and it reached more than $4 billion. So I would like to say that we have the most active portfolio right after Nigeria for the whole of Africa. And this is truly remarkable. Mr. President, you know how committed I am towards the educational sector in Niger. We want it to be inclusive. We have talked about this together. And I am convinced that access to quality education, to quality healthcare will allow Niger to fully accomplish its demographic dividend. And I really thank the World Bank for its support when it comes to population and education. We have this program also on economic empowerment of women. We have the LIR project that we have talked about. And I thank you for that. And I would also like to stress the help of the World Bank in the program for building classrooms for girls. It is an important portfolio, and we are looking forward to the realization of this project in the next few years, inshallah. Mr. President of the World Bank Group, ladies and gentlemen, climate change and energy issues are, of course, big challenges for our continent. Africa is one of the regions that has been more affected by climate change. We need to protect our natural environment. We need to protect the public goods. And as you know, in Sahel, we have droughts, we have water stresses, we have deforestation, and all of this is affecting migration, is affecting poverty, exclusion. And in the last few years, we have seen that it's also feeding all sorts of conflicts. It is important to stress that the CCDR, the Country Climate and Development Report, shows that our country could see a drop of GDP going all the way to 11.7% by 2050. And this only because of the scarcity of water due to climate change. So 13.5 million of persons could now be in extreme poverty instead of 11. And I think it is now time to talk about what can be done in terms of renewable energy. But I'm also thinking about the transborder watersheds that are very useful to support our population. We need to invest in the energy sector in the G5 Sahel countries. And of course, a high amount of investment is needed. And so we wish that the CCDR's recommendations in terms of energy would be implemented. We would also like to stress the role of the Great Green Wall. An action plan of $20 billion has been identified. And we have seen the definition of new project in Sahel in terms of climate resilience and adaptation. In terms of climate challenges, I think that we have to mobilize more investment in adaptation. And this is in line with the spirit behind the Great Green Wall project. And I would like to ask the World Bank to invest in initiatives about our rivers so that we can lessen the risk of floods, so that we can restore our soils and also further develop irrigation. All of these initiatives will be allowed to crowd in public and private investments and create green jobs so that we can support food security programs in our country. The private sector is also called to action in this strategic action with a mobilization of national resources and improving the climate for businesses. The agro-pastoral field has to be taken into account as a priority, and we also have to think about renewable energy. Innovative financing options also have to collect our attention and the attention of our partners. Digitalization for us is a key tool for development. In that regard, we have Smart Villages projects financed by the World Bank. And this project is a key factor for innovation and national integration. We need to have access to capital so that we can have a full recovery. The advanced countries are financing their deficits, but our countries cannot access to international markets to put in place the economic recovery that we need and that we are allowed to hope for. In terms of the SDGs, I think it is indispensable that we have the support of our technical and financial partners so that we can access those markets in the best conditions possible, so that we can quickly finance inclusive public policies and also to improve justice and security in our country. And as you know, Mr. President, IDA was a priority for many African countries, mine included. And we turn to IDA for our development agenda. And so I would like to stress the quality of the policy that has been implemented by IDA when we look at what has been done for many years. And we see that there has been an increase of the financial capacity for our countries. And we see the key amount of $93 million that has been decided in December. Very happy also with the human capital strengthening mechanism. And I am also happy to see that the fragility and resilience are at the center of this strategy. We also see hybrid financing models since IDA 2018, and we see balance sheet optimization that truly reinforces the role of IDA in the support of our countries towards development. We also need to close the financing gap in our countries. We need to have concessional terms loans, and we need to have a sustainable debt service.
But concessionality goes with the partners' contribution. So the partners would like an increase beyond what we have, 24 billion during the four last cycles of IDA. Whether having a better commitment of IDA with our countries, I would like to insist on the Sahel people in the Great Lakes, in the Africa Horn, that are faced with the crises that are without precedent, Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen. For us, the reform that was launched for the World Bank should be the opportunity to respond positively to the IDA countries that are calling upon their partners to have more flexibility and also the reconstitution of and the substantial increase of resources. We favorably see the process for the evolution of the World Bank Group, and we would like to congratulate the governors and our executive directors for their informing and making sure that the positions of our countries are taken into account in the discussions and in developing recommendations for the reform of the World Bank Group. Within this perspective, our countries would like to take into account the recommendation in the agenda of your discussions. Take into account the extreme poverty item. Take into account the fact that security is a public good. Thirdly, flexibility in access to energy, taking into account our reality and our natural resources. Fourthly, more financing for concessional means and the integration then of the region, which would be my fifth point. We are happy to see that the World Bank Group does take into account our regional characteristics and what is specific to Africa for development. Unfortunately, also our conflicts, numerous conflicts, security, food security, insecurity rather, the deficit in energy, the deficit in water, the issues with sanitation, and of course, without forgetting our demographics, which is characterized by the youth of our people. It is obvious that for us, within the reforms that we have right now, the World Bank should have the trajectory on extreme poverty. 500 million people that are affected in 2021, and then it was only in 90, it was 278 million. In Africa, we see more 600 million people without access to electricity. We have to develop a capacity for energy production to have the development, but also to make sure that we will have a sustainable growth that would be inclusive. And I would like to congratulate here the project Scale Up Scholar in Niger and the electrification project that is supported by the World Bank. My country has the ambition to have access to 30% to electricity, and so we have a very low number right now, so that the reform of the World Bank be up to par of the ambitions. We have to mobilize financial resources beyond what we have now. So I would like to seize this opportunity to launch an appeal to our partners in the World Bank Group so that the process of reform be supported with additional financing up to our ambitions. Mr. President, your visit is a new opportunity to give an optimistic perspective for our continent, that we have potentials enormous. We have resources, immense resources, gas, oil, precious minerals, and we have land for agriculture. So we would have a better growth in economy with a population that has 2/3 of youth. Our visit will give you the opportunity to measure the challenges and the opportunities that we have on our continent. I am also convinced that it will contribute to specify ideas and to show the changes that we are expecting in our partner that is the biggest in development. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you. Excellent, Your Excellency, with pragmatism, clarity, but also a lot of hope for youth in Sahel that is represented here very largely here in this room. Now, I will ask you to welcome the President of the World Bank Group for his speech on stability and growth in crisis.
Thank you for being with us, and I now welcome you to take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, President Bazoum. And thank you to the University of Niamey and to the government and people of Niger for the warm welcome and for your hospitality. It's a great pleasure for me to be speaking with you today from Niger ahead of the World Bank Group IMF spring meetings. Niger is in the heart of the Sahel, and the place where many of the hardest development challenges overlap. Yet, history teaches us that the Sahelian trade routes were also the source of immense opportunities. Today, the success of the Sahel is vital for the success of development. My speech is about both the central dilemmas of development policy in a time of crisis and the opportunities we see, especially the opportunities that we must harness, especially for the region. Niger personifies this blend of challenge and opportunity. Amid regional tensions, one of the lowest electrification and highest birth rates in the world, a harsh climate, and difficult economic circumstances, we are partnering with the government in their efforts to create opportunity, including reforms that promote stability, human capital, and economic opportunities for the growing population. I am pleased to see Niger taking bold steps to help people improve their lives. Your efforts to counter violent extremism by creating jobs, skills, and inclusion for youth in fragile and conflict-prone areas should be an example for other countries. I commend your focus on maintaining security and peace in the region, building resilience to the devastating impacts and costs of climate change, investing in girls' education, and sustaining democratic achievements. Over the last few years, the world has faced an unprecedented series of crises. The World Bank Group has led through these crises with a clear focus on rapid and impactful support. In previous speeches, I have spoken about the World Bank Group's responses to the devastating reversals in development, including rising poverty rates, backsliding in access to electricity and clean water, and the severe setbacks in foundational learning skills due to school closures. The COVID-19 pandemic cost millions of lives, caused massive job losses, and disrupted supply chains. It led to the loss of more than 1 full year of education for 1 billion children around the world. That underscores the urgency of a strong recovery in education. The pandemic also triggered extraordinary policy responses, with macroeconomic consequences still being felt. Inflation soared, with governments providing massive fiscal and monetary support to counter the pandemic, especially in the advanced economies. The war in Ukraine triggered outright shortages of fuel, food, and fertilizer. Natural disasters struck hard too, from earthquakes in Turkey and Syria to floods across South Asia and catastrophic drought in East Africa. Developing countries have suffered the most from this onslaught of crises. The pandemic increased the global extreme poverty rate from 8.4 to 9.3%. That's the first recorded increase in poverty since we started keeping count. The true death toll remains unknown in many parts of the world. Now, a growing number of developing countries are facing the prospect of major domestic crises, with economic growth slowing, poverty and hunger on the rise, public debts reaching unsustainable levels amid rising interest rates, ineffective mechanisms for resolving external debt distress, underinvestment, and growing populations. Confronted by these developments, we have the responsibility to forcefully reassert core economic principles for development in every country. I will highlight 4 in my speech today. First, achieving macroeconomic stability is critical, not least because fiscal recklessness compromises essential services and inflation penalizes the poor the most. Second, sound policies to promote private investment should always remain a top priority because without them, there would be no economic growth. Third, free and fair international trade must be nurtured because it promotes efficiency and creates enormous opportunities for growth and convergence. And finally, the international community's mechanisms to finance the provision of global public goods must be strengthened because climate costs, conflict, and pandemics will set back human progress everywhere unless the effectiveness of global efforts improve. I'll mention 2 other undertakings that are critical here in the Sahel. One is human capital, especially investing in the health of infants and the education of young people to create opportunities for a better future. That's it. That's important here. The second is good governance, citizen participation, and accountability of public officials. I commend Niger for its first ever peaceful transition of power 2 years ago. These hard to achieve societal attributes are necessary for peace, stability, economic growth, and prosperity. Over the past few decades, countries in Africa have made considerable progress in human development by bringing primary school enrollment rates close to 90% on average, with the continent recording some of the biggest increases in elementary school enrollment. Africa has also scored some of the fastest improvements in key health metrics, including life expectancy and the under 5 mortality rates. Less progress has been achieved on the governance front, with multiple coups in recent years across the continent, domestic conflicts, and rising violence. The multiple crises we have faced in recent years call for an affirmation and adaptation of basic economic principles to a new, more challenging environment. Let's start with macroeconomic stability, including government spending and revenues, monetary policy, and currency stability. To respond to the pandemic, countries around the world ran large budget deficits and saw significant increases in public debt. In many developing countries, the stimulus response came on top of sharp increases in debt from projects that were financed by entities outside the traditional creditor countries. These contracts often lacked transparency. As a result, public debt has grown to unsustainable levels in much of the developing world, with precise amounts and terms often unknown due to non-disclosure clauses, collateralized debt and debt-like arrangements, and escrow accounts. As we meet today, more than half of the world's poorest countries are in or at high risk of debt distress. Their difficulties are mounting as the world economy and asset prices adjust to more normal interest rates and bond yields. Inflation and higher interest rates in advanced economies lead to capital shortages for developing countries, causing currency depreciation and higher interest rates, thereby adding to the debt burden. Thus, governments must plan for continued financial stress. This requires adopting a credible fiscal policy framework. On the spending side, policymakers must increase the efficiency of public spending, remove wasteful and regressive subsidies, and improve public procurement. On the revenue side, governments should be reducing tax exemptions and broadening the tax base, not repeatedly suffering the diminishing returns of tax and tariff rate increases. Enacting long-term fiscal discipline in government finances is vital to attract private sector capital. Further, to stop the deepening inequality from devaluations, governments that issue their own currencies must prioritize creating the conditions for sound money. Monetary policy also has a role in supporting private investment, primarily by promoting low and stable inflation over the medium term. This should be anchored in a fiscal policy that does not depend on monetization of government deficits. I will now turn to policies that enable private investment. Developing countries have immense investment needs given inadequate infrastructure, rapid urbanization, and escalating climate costs. Capital inflows from abroad will have a role to play in financing these needs, but in these uncertain times, with widespread pressures from debt distress, countries will not be assured of foreign financing. The stability and efficiency of domestic financial markets should be at the forefront of policymakers' efforts to meet domestic investment needs. The COVID-19 pandemic showed that a key attribute of a successful response to crisis was a diversified investor base. This puts a premium on an environment that allows domestic savings to flow to productive private sector firms instead of being channeled to public deficits. This requires a pool of savings and access to domestic financial markets through an enabling environment. That enabling environment should include regulations that facilitate the entry and growth of private firms, competition in domestic product and financial markets, including a level playing field for state-owned enterprises and the government, transparent access to international markets, effective mechanisms to allow firms to exit when they fail, and clear policies and practices against corruption. These steps are hard, but they're achievable, and they're necessary for private sector development. Last week, I announced the World Bank Group's new approach to strengthen our delivery of private capital facilitation. If successful, it aims to create an infrastructure asset class. These efforts are key to strengthening private sectors, attracting private capital to meet climate and development costs, and boosting resources for development. Another necessary condition for development is robust international trade. For decades, the rapid economic integration of economies and the increase in cross-border commerce delivered substantial gains to global growth. Businesses were able to tap larger markets, gain economies of scale, and on net, generate jobs for millions. However, global trade volumes had started to decline even before the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russian invasion of Ukraine. There had been ample concern about the deterioration of the global trade system, including the unequal application of WTO rules by some countries. Most recently, subsidies to farmers and punitive tariffs on imported food products make it difficult for farmers in developing countries who tend to be poor and are not subsidized, difficult for them to compete. The trade concerns worsened during the pandemic, and the Russian invasion of Ukraine further added to protectionist policies, raised commodity and food prices, and encouraged stockpiling. These developments have fueled a drive towards self-sufficiency. triggering another wave of protectionism, subsidies, and local content requirements. Industrial policy is making a strong comeback, with government support extending from inputs such as aluminum, steel, and chemicals to final products such as electric vehicles. The clear effect throughout history is greater conflict and slower growth, with poorer nations suffering the most. I'm sorry. Not surprisingly, global trade is expected to shrink in 2023. If ongoing trends are maintained, they will severely undercut international commerce and the benefits that come from it. Slowing trade will create a headwind for the global economy and especially for the poorest countries, which require access to global markets to achieve sustained economic growth and poverty reduction. A renewed recognition of the essential value of international trade is needed. Its key principles are relatively straightforward. Trade that is based on comparative advantage and specialization is additive to innovation, efficiency, and growth. Government intervention should be targeted, time-bound, proportional, and non-discriminatory, and governments should recognize the growth benefits of harmonizing tariffs, customs procedures, and standards for safety and climate. Importantly, trade finance and access to sound money are essential to realizing the benefits of cross-border commerce. Here in Africa, there is huge potential for regional trade to reduce food insecurity and fertilizer shortages. For example, the continent produces approximately 30 million metric tons of fertilizer each year, twice as much as it consumes. And yet, approximately 90% of fertilizer consumed in sub-Saharan Africa is imported, mostly from outside the continent. This reflects a poorly functioning market system, inefficiencies in shipping and port costs, distribution chains and information availability, and a range of regional trade frictions. Each factor needs a concerted effort by African nations to fix the system. Better trade infrastructure and facilitation measures such as harmonized rules, have an important role. And finally, the international community's mechanisms to finance the provision of global public goods must be strengthened. Just as trade practice should account for the impact of one country's policies on another country, many cross-border activities also have costs with consequences that stretch far into the future. Climate costs are being incurred worldwide without much regard to which countries are causing the damage. Fragility in one country or region can have massive costs in a neighbor or a distant country. And most recently, the pandemic showed that global costs of a pathogen, the unequal impact on the poor, and the importance of countries working together to share information and health practices. The investment needs related to global public goods are vast. We estimate that developing countries will need $2.4 trillion per year for the next 7 years to address the global challenges just of climate mitigation and adaptation, conflict, and pandemics. It's a huge number. Let me mention each in turn. Climate change is causing widespread costs, with the most vulnerable people and systems bearing the brunt. Adaptation is a top priority for developing countries, including more resilient agricultural practices and migration to safer locations. Developing countries also need to find low-carbon growth paths to provide reliable and affordable electricity and build resilient cities. The benefits of these efforts can extend beyond emissions reduction. For example, phasing out coal reduces local air pollution and makes for healthier communities. The same is true with regard to security. The number of civil conflicts almost doubled over the last decade. Conflict is tragic for the affected populations, which tend to be much poorer than the global average, and it has significant spillover effects to other countries. This is vividly experienced every day by the people in the Sahel region. We must also recognize the cost of pandemics and learn from the lessons of COVID-19. The pandemic fatally exposed the shortcomings of our global infrastructure for pandemic preparedness and response. Preventing pandemics requires investments in laboratory and diagnostics. It requires surveillance, clinical care, infection control, infrastructure and supply chains, human resources, and management systems linkages. New concessional resources will be particularly important for global public goods, including to facilitate energy transition, bolster security, and so on. Results-based mechanisms are an efficient way to provide concessionality in a non-fragmented manner. Against this background of overlapping crises, the World Bank Group doubled its financing for global public goods during my presidency, reaching over $100 billion reaching over $100 billion in the 3-year period of fiscal years 2020 through 2022, with over half of this amount in climate finance. We are continually exploring options to further increase our financial capacity. At the spring meetings upcoming, we're expecting to increase IBRD's financing. That's the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development. The IBRD's financing capacity by up to $50 billion over the next 10 years. IDA replenishments, the International Development Administration that the president mentioned, IDA replenishments have doubled over the past decade. They reached $93 billion in IDA 20. That's the most recent 3-year replenishment and the most ambitious in IDA's history. This was possible through financial innovations, including the issuance of well-received IDA bonds. However, there are still 700 million people living on less than $2 a day. They should be the world's highest priority. During the last 4 years, we have shown that financing for development can be quickly ramped up. Development needs have increased dramatically, and so should development finance to help countries such as Niger implement good development policies that support their citizens, boost economic growth, alleviate poverty, maintain peace, and respond to problems. With that, I want to thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malpass, for the speech and for reminding us of the international context within which Sahel finds itself today and all the challenges ahead, but also the opportunities for improvement. Nous vous remercions, Monsieur le Président, pour ce discours de positionnement du groupe de la Banque mondiale.
Thank you, Mr. Malpass, for this positioning speech. Thank you for having reminded us of the context around this event. You have talked about the many challenges for our region. You've also talked about the future in terms of commerce, trade, energy. You talked about the need to talk about human capital, also good governance for peace and stability. So thank you so much. It is not a chance that you came to Niger to give this speech. It was an opportunity for you to look at the realities of our country and also talk to the different actors who are working in this field and who are affected by the challenges and opportunities that you have raised. I would like now to give the floor to some of the private sector actors in Niger. And we have with us today Zainabou Maïda. She's an agri-food engineer. She has founded Niger Lait. She is now the CEO of this company. She has created 1,500 jobs. Thank you for being with us, Zainabou. We also have Aisha Maki. She is part of this panel. She's been working on the field as a sociologist, and she has been making films to highlight social issues, particularly about women and youth. For the last 15 years, she has been training young people in the film industry. And we have a key economic operator in Niger with us today. He has created thousands of jobs. He's an insurer, and he's the CEO of an insurance company, the first insurance company of Niger, the most important one. So I would like to welcome him. It is Ibrahim Idi Ango. Welcome. We have about 20 minutes with us to talk about the private sector and the challenges for the people in the region. I would like to give each panelist a few minutes so that they can describe their experience, the challenges and opportunities that they see for our region, starting with Mr. Ango. You have the floor, Mr. Ango. Thank you. Excellencies, Mr. President of the Republic, Mr. President of the World Bank Group, I think you have been very clear when you talked about the different challenges that we have in terms of development. Of course, we are able to take on these challenges. Of course, we do not have much time, and we have to make sure each actor is being fully committed. First, of course, the government. We have to invest in human capital in all its forms. We also have to have support from our partners, bilateral and multilateral partners. Your support, Mr. Malpass, is key to complement the efforts of our government so that we can protect ourselves from a potential failure, a failure who would have catastrophic effects on our demographic transition. Finally, when it comes to the private sector, what I would like to say is that it has a role and a mission in creating jobs, particularly jobs for our young people. And this will allow us to dampen the shock from our demographic change. Our security is not just dependent on the number of weapons, and it also depends on the number of jobs we can create for our young people, most particularly. And when we think about this need of job creation, I think there's a key data that we have to look at. President Malpass reminded us about this. It is about the effects of climate change. Climate change today is considered by all as an accelerator of all sorts of crises, migration, conflicts. It is a multiplier, it is an amplifier of conflicts. And we have seen this. Several findings have been shared by all of the specialists and non-specialists alike. I will start with the observation that our countries are the first hit. Our countries are not the creators or the authors of this crisis, but our victim status has legitimated our demands towards countries that are the highest polluters. And we have done so in the Summit on Climate Change. The issue is that financing our climate transition involves very large amounts of money. And so today we are in a state of urgency. The crises are being seen in water, education, many other topics, and we see that the level of financing is not sufficient. So for the survival of the private sector has to solve issues day after day. And Mr. President, I would like to talk about an activity that has been carried out, and it is cement fabrication. We need a lot of coal to make cement. And as you talked about it, we are moving away from coal. And today we have to import coal from abroad. Not very far away, but it is very expensive, and it is logistically complicated to bring this coal in our country because we have to pay it in the local currency. And of course, we need a lot of coal. And we need a high quality coal also. And so my question is the following: what can we do while we are waiting for more financing for climate action? Will we now start to intensify the use of our coal? And do we try to reach a quick economic independence? Do we try to be also independent in terms of currencies? Or the alternative is that we wait, but can we survive? Maybe we can wait. We wait for the financing of climate action. We wait for this money to come to us, and then we do something. So what do we do? Mr. President, I would not have dared saying those questions out loud a while back. I am doing so today because we have seen that coal plants are reopening everywhere in the world, in Europe, in Asia. And we've seen countries that are supposed to be leading the way in terms of clean energy, reopening their coal plants. So what do we do? Do we try to look for alternatives? When we listen to what is being said in those climate change summits, we see that the talk is not the same as the actions for some of these countries. So then we have issues. We have food insecurity. We suffer the consequences of climate change. So these are the issues that the private sector is faced with here today. We are 3 members of the private sector here today with you, but of course in this room there are dozens of people like us and maybe thousands of people listening to us in Africa today. They believe in Africa, they invest, and they believe in our possibilities. They don't think that Africa is part of the problem. They think that Africa is part of the solution. These investors invest day in, day out in their countries, the same as we do here in our country. They take risks every day. They create wealth. They create jobs for young people. Of course, they generate profits. They participate to the mobilization of resources that is much needed in our countries. These investors, they believe in the solutions they can bring to solve our issue, to improve regional integration, and integration that is orderly that takes into account strengths and weaknesses of each partner, and not this uncontrolled integration that some are trying to push us towards. We do not want to see the disintegration of the weak links in this form of integration.
Mr. President, if we're here, it's because we believe in the future of our country profoundly. Even if one of my friends said you are far from the sea, but close to the sun. So I don't know if it was a scientific truth, probably the time of the time. And I see that you drink a lot of water, so maybe he's right to say that we are closer to the sun than others. In any case, whether or not we're closer to the sun, Niger today has the advantage of the alignment of planets, I think. We have to have the road to success, and we will have the support of our partners for development, and you are one. And I think that you did deploy a lot of efforts for the government, and we hope that this type of effort get to the private sector. And Mr. President, I hope that after your visit here, the private sector in Niger will not be the poor parent of the financing by the IFC, because the valiance of our investors, in spite of it, we do not have the financing from the IFC that is up to par with our efforts and our commitments. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. Angot, for this presentation of the challenges that you have as a private enterprise. So the importance of the human capital and the importance of the climate change that we're talking about for Niger, for the region. But you ended on a positive note, though, and you have the hope that things will go better for all the actors in the private sector. Now I'll give the floor to your colleague, and I will give you a few minutes to talk about your reality. Thank you. Thank you, dear friend. Excellencies, Mr. President of our Republic, Mr. President of the World Bank, guests, in this launching, after the introduction by our brother, I would like to focus on two words, two concepts that were mentioned several times: economic growth, inclusive, sustainable, security, food security. For me, these are constraints that exist that have to help us to get to the economic growth. I think we focused on the energy earlier. However, for the private sector to which I belong, we have faced several challenges. You did note, indeed, with the two presidents that we have next to us, the improvement of business climate. So business climate is not only infrastructure, roads and railroads, the access to many things, but also to improve taxation that is not a development one, but rather taxation that is collecting revenues. And for this, Mr. President, you did note so The private sector is here to support, and the partners exist also to support us today, to really understand the reform that is a risk that would increase taxation, that would bring about a better tax base. Our tax code changes every year. We are almost strangled. And I think it's an impasse we have together to enable Niger to keep on with the vision of growth. Access to financing, it's one of the items that we wanted to broach, because for costs and accessibility and availability, it is a recurring issue. The conditionalities for us should be positive in discrimination. We have hundreds of thousands of people who would like to invest themselves for the economic development that be sustainable for Africa, for Sahel. The youth is present. They have a lot of ideas. They work in this sector. Let's support them. That is significant. Food security is one of the challenges, and it will be feasible only by access to water. We couldn't talk about food security without talking of water access. I do not think that it's a secret today. Niger has 50 billion cubic meters of water underground. We are sitting on wealth that will enable us to have exponential growth, while working, of course, while proving that we can use this underground water. Sorry? So I will go faster. So the usage of these resources will improve irrigation capacity, over 2 billion hectares of workable land that will enable small farmers to feed their families, to sell whatever is in excess, improve their existence and subsistence means, and to reinforce resilience to climate change. Thus, urgently, we will have to implement infrastructure programs that will enable us to use these water resources. I'm coming to an end. Thank you very much. Thank you. You talked about taxation and taxes. This is an issue that is a delicate issue. Mr. Mackey, Madam Mackey, you have a few minutes to present your presentation. Thank you to the President of the Republic, Your Excellency, the World Bank President, dear colleagues. I will talk about life as a sociologist, and also I'm working in the field. In your speeches, you talked about education, so this is what I will focus on, because for me, I come a poor neighborhood. My parents didn't go to school. I am really a foreign object, if you will, amongst you. And I have to say that education that is a social good, without this, I wouldn't be here with you today. Thus, this education that we're talking, all of us and the presidents did decide that it was its main topic, is faced with two challenges. Insecurity, first of all, and the issue of insecurity showed that the tools for instruction or education are not adapted or lacking. I was in Tillabéri for remote education, and a young person was with us, and he didn't talk. After we insisted, when we talked about remote education, he opened up and said, if we could learn through the tablets and TV, my brother wouldn't have died. What happened? His brother was killed, and under the tree of Palaver, his cadaver was left. Children didn't go to school. So in Tillabéri, most of the children, as most the children that are in insecurity zone, do not go to school because I don't have to give you figures. The number of children that do not go to school because of insecurity. So it's not about learning instruments, but insecurity. We've shown in the pandemic that there were lacks, and there were people that had platforms to keep children going to school or learning, but all the children that do not go to school, where are they today? We have insecurity and here around our borders, and they are being recruited abroad. Mr. President, I think that we are not only victims, we could be a solution on this if we have the opportunities, and the solution is here, as you can see in the room. That's it. We have with us future engineers. They will not have the capacity to go to labs. You have the capacity to open the doors to great institutions with a program to mobilize so that teachers and students go, for instance, to see how an agronomist be faced with climate change in order to have inputs that would be adapted. They could learn that. I assure you, the World Bank is working in Niger for the past 50 years, but zero planning, fine. But when I talk about zero famine, we have a solution. We do. If the youth were to have accessible tools that would enable them to face challenges, for instance, food insecurity and pollution, because then we'll have engineers, agronomists that will be adapted to the issues, and so that people be fed. We have the underground that is quite rich, wealthy, and the people will be fed, so zero famine would be a reality thus. That, for me, these young people that are here, we did predict here in Sahel that it would be a bomb, but we will become dividends of demographics, and we develop the country because we will have something in our hands here. Especially, we have this capacity to reinforce the education to go. Many people didn't have the luck that we've had. We went to school, we have education, and this will be a weapon that will be a regrouping, because we'll be able to do many things to develop our country. Mr. President, I hope that your institution will be able to open doors, because where you go, enable our young people implement the tools to support reforms. You have to have all kinds of people, partners, the young people, you, the partners who will finance, so we'll have success altogether. Thank you very much. Thank you for representing youth We're getting to the end of our roundtable. Time goes very fast, and people, 30 seconds, 30 seconds for a conclusion, a message to end, a few topics that we would like to imprint, if you will. My message is that Niger was chosen. It's not fortuitous, and challenges are enormous. Mr. President, we have the hope that for 2023, 2026, that we will see a development of the interventions of the World Bank and finance even more the private sector for our program for the agro-industry and structural development and transformation of our economy.
Best result. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Maïda, pour ce mot
Thank
très
you, Madam, for these few words. You have the floor. I have a dream. Young Sahelian, I would like to wake up one day and see that weapons are replaced by birds, by children with their toys, because children will be developed in Sahel. I have to know how the World Bank that helped Europe will make sure that our dreams are being a reality with our government, with support, so that education, because I'm pretty sure that this reduces diversity and also breaks up poverty. This is my dream. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Maki. Mr. Ango, a few seconds, 30 seconds. Thank you. You have the last word here. I just wanted to have a message for the youth. The private initiative, don't fear it, not fear yourself, and have in head that success, it's also audacity. If you have the will, if you have the faith and audacity, you will always have a path in front of you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ango.
From the panelists, I will now ask you, if you will, please, to share with us your remarks and conclusions. Je vais vous inviter donc à partager vos remarques de conclusion, s'il vous
Would
plaît.
you like to share with us a few concluding words?
Thanks very much. I have a parting shot, which is how wonderful it is that people can speak openly here. It's not all countries around the world where there can be the president of the country and people and the president of the World Bank and people speaking openly. Thank you. And then I want to echo the points made of Sahelian opportunity, or the dream that young people can go boldly and can think that there will be opportunities, and through education, through girls' education, through the programs that are going on, and the World Bank is committed to supporting that as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Malpass. Monsieur le président donc, du groupe de la Banque mondiale, qui
Mr. Malpass just reiterated his support to Niger and the whole region of Sahel. So thank you for that. Before you go, I would like to give you the floor, Mr. President of the Republic of Niger, Mr. Bazoum, a few closing words, if you would like. If you wish to, just a few words. So first of all, I would like to thank you. Thank you for having very skillfully carried out your task here. I would also like to thank all the students who have come in number today. I think this shows the interest that they have in this meeting that we have today. So thank you for that. I would also like to thank all the authorities of Niger. I want to thank the communities that have been represented throughout this meeting. I would like to say that the World Bank Group, as I mentioned in my speech, really has been living up to its original mandate in the last few years in a different context. At the beginning of the 90s, I remember that the policies inspired by the World Bank at the time really had harmful effects on our societies, harmful social and political effects, and we will remember them for a long time. There has been a true change in paradigm. I think that this shift is very evident in the new projects carried out by the World Bank, and there is now an alignment on our own priorities. What the World Bank group does in education is key and will be amplified in the next few years. And I think it is almost the opposite of what it pleaded for in the 90s. So there has been a real evolution in that regard. And I really want to strengthen our mutual understanding that the World Bank has to be on top of the wishes that we express. They have to be very close to us, and we have to work together so that we can really have a change thanks to the resources that we have. Today, we have to facilitate access to financial resources. We have to have several mechanisms allowing us to carry out meaningful investments that can have an impact on the economical situation of our country. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. President, for your closing remarks. Thank you also to all of our panelists. Thanks for having shared your realities and your reflections today. I remind you that we were also broadcast on the live World Bank Live. I would like to ask you, Mr. President of Niger and Mr. Malpass, I would like to thank you. Thank you for your presence here today. And if you would like, I would like for you, everybody, to sit down while our guests leave the room. Thank you. Thanks again for your presence here today. And this brings us to the end of this event with the positioning speech of the World Bank President in preparation for the spring meetings of the World Bank Group and the IMF. Thank you so much.